first sign that something was wrong wasn't the silence. It was the empty top of the filing cabinet. For over 2 years, that square of scratched metal, just left of the front desk at Elkgrove Wildlife Center, belonged to one resident, Milo, a bobcat with soft ears, quiet eyes, and a habit of appearing where food had recently disappeared. That morning, it was empty, and the building felt colder because of it. Denise noticed first. She was refilling the sugar jar in the break room when she paused, spoon midair. "Where's Milo?" she asked, not really expecting an answer. Nobody replied. People moved around her, gathering clipboards, typing reports. But their rhythm was off. Like someone had pulled the soul out of the place and left only tasks behind. Then came the news. "He's been moved," Tim whispered. The youngest intern, always careful, always watching. Mr. Hart said it's a liability issue. Leonard Hart, the new operations director, had arrived 2 weeks earlier from Chicago. He wore expensive glasses and spoke in clean bullet points. No one had seen him smile. "He said Milo compromised food safety protocols," Tim added, and that he may have been involved in the cake incident." The room went still. The cake incident had happened the night before. A 4-tier maple cream centerpiece for the autumn benefit had gone missing from the walk-in cooler just hours before the event. All that remained was a smear of frosting and a single muddy paw print on the tile. And now, the blame had fallen on the one who couldn't defend himself. Outside, beyond the admin wing, Milo now sat in the farthest enclosure. Not in the shaded outdoor yard he once dozed in with other permanent rescues, but in a separate pen near the tool shed. Chain-link walls, no blankets, no access to warmth or company or the familiar scent of the people he trusted. He didn't pace, he didn't yowl, he just sat there, watching the building, waiting for someone to come back. But no one did. Long before the missing cake, long before laminated policies and personnel memos, Milo had simply been there. He came in as a juvenile, too big to be called a kid, too small to survive alone. Found by hikers near the edge of Pine Hill Ridge, he had a limp in his back leg and no signs of a mother anywhere nearby. Someone dropped him off in a cardboard produce box lined with old towels, left a donation check scribbled with a heart, and drove away. That was nearly 3 years ago. At first, the team at Elkgrove Wildlife Center did what they always did: treat, observe, prepare to release. But Milo was different. He healed quickly, but never hunted. They placed mice in his enclosure. He ignored them. They hid quail beneath pine boughs. He sniffed, blinked, and curled up to nap. The vets tried stimulation therapy. The handlers created mock prey exercises. One intern even stitched feathers into a sock and danced it across the enclosure floor for 3 days straight. Milo responded the same way every time. He'd look up with gentle disinterest, as if to say, "I see your effort. I admire your creativity. I will now return to doing nothing." Eventually, the staff gave up on wildness. They gave him something else instead: a fleece blanket, a spot near the heater, and quiet acceptance. And Milo stayed. He never became tame, not in the way some people misunderstand the word. He didn't come when called, didn't beg for food, didn't purr, but he watched. He understood routines. He moved like air through the building, silent, steady, ever present. When volunteers arrived early, Milo was already there. When someone had a hard day, he seemed to appear, not for affection, but as witness. He became part of the rhythm of the place. He would nap under the front desk when it rained. He'd appear beside Brenda when she carried leftovers. And he had an uncanny ability to detect the crinkle of a snack wrapper from 3 rooms away. There were incidents, of course. He once made off with half a grilled cheese sandwich during a staff meeting. Another time, He swatted a carrot stick off a plate just to watch it roll under the fridge. But no one was upset. If anything, people competed to earn his attention. Brenda started keeping extra biscuits in her apron pocket for emergencies. Tim left his apple cores near the radiator, just in case he's hungry. Dr. Boone, the senior vet, insisted the occasional chicken thigh somehow fell off the post-surgery table. Everyone knew. No one cared. Because in a place full of pain, of broken wings and exhausted eyes and animals who didn't always make it, Milo made people laugh. And that made him family. So when he was gone from the hallway that morning, when the top of the filing cabinet sat empty, the corners of the office felt colder, and no one moved quite the same. It wasn't just the absence of a bobcat. It was the silence that follows when you take something warm out of a room and don't put it back. Tim stared out the window longer than usual that morning. "Have you ever noticed," he whispered, "how he always looked at people like he was waiting for them to do the right thing?" No one replied, but somewhere beyond the fence line, Milo sat. Still, patient, like he was waiting again. The cake was meant to be the highlight. 4 layers tall, laced with maple cream frosting, candied pecans, and tiny sugar leaves the color of Vermont autumn. It had been donated by a local pastry chef, someone whose name appeared in city magazines and who wore white coats embroidered with gold thread. It was the centerpiece of Elkgrove's Harvest Benefit Gala, the one night of the year where the center turned from a place of rescue and routine into a place of string lights, silent auctions, and small speeches. Donors came dressed in boots polished for the occasion. Volunteers wore their best flannels. Even Dr. Boone found a clean jacket. The cake was placed in the walk-in cooler the night before the event. It was tagged, logged, and locked. But by morning, it was gone. The discovery happened at 6:42 a.m. when Brenda opened the cooler to check prep supplies and stopped cold. The stainless steel tray was still there. The scattered crumbs were still there. But the cake? Gone. Completely. In its place, a single muddy paw print. Roughly feline, roughly damning. Martin Hart arrived minutes later. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the print, looked at Brenda, and said, "I want the bobcat confined immediately, and I want written statements by the end of the day." No one argued with him. Not in that moment. The mood at the center changed like a flipped switch. What should have been a day of celebration turned tight and formal. Staff went quiet. Volunteers stuck to corners. A new sign was posted on the break room door. All food items must be monitored at all times. And Milo? He was already in the enclosure, already blamed. When Tim heard, he looked confused, then hurt. "But he couldn't have opened the cooler," he said. "Right? It was locked." Brenda didn't answer. Dr. Boone muttered something about latch weaknesses, then excused himself. No one wanted to fight, not really. But something didn't sit right. It was Faith, the administrative assistant, no one noticed much, who finally said it out loud. "He never runs from trouble. He watches. He waits." If he had done it, would he have stayed? Silence. Later that day, as the benefit guests arrived, the cake table sat empty. Brenda had made emergency muffins. A few people joked about rustic charm. Martin kept checking his watch. Milo remained outside. He didn't eat his dinner. He didn't curl up on the hay bale. He sat in the corner of the pen, facing the building, unmoving. And when the lights from the gala sparkled against the windows, he turned his head, just slightly, and blinked once, almost like he knew. Someone in that building owed him the truth. The fundraiser ended with polite clapping, a few generous checks, and a lot of awkward smiles. No one mentioned the missing cake out loud. but the absence of it hung in the air like "Facema c'est moi," something everyone felt, no one named. Back in the staff lounge after the last guest had gone, the cleanup crew sat slumped around the break room table. A half-empty pot of coffee, 3 untouched muffins, and a silence that pressed against the walls. Tim couldn't sit still. "I've been thinking about that cake," he said suddenly, "and about Milo." Brenda looked up from wiping crumbs. "Tim, no, just listen. I checked the latch on that cooler after you opened it. It was still engaged. I had to twist it to close it again." So how would a bobcat open a tumbler latch?" Tim asked, eyes wide. "He can swipe a sandwich off a desk, sure, but pick a lock?" Dr. Boone leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying something's wrong, and we have proof." He pointed to the corner, the security laptop. No one had bothered to check the cameras, not yet. The accusation had come so fast, so firmly, it hadn't occurred to anyone that there might be more to the story. Until now, 10 minutes later, the screen glowed in the dark break room. Dr. Boone controlled the playback while Tim hovered over his shoulder. Brenda stood with her arms crossed, biting the edge of a thumbnail. Faith had pulled a chair into the doorway but didn't sit. "Camera 4 covers the hallway by the kitchen," Boone said, "and 6 shows the cooler entrance. Let's start there." The footage played. Timestamp 02:19 a.m. The building was dark, no movement. Then, a faint shadow crept along the floor. Everyone leaned in. It wasn't Milo. It was smaller. 2 figures came into view, low to the ground, masked faces, black-ringed tails. "Raccoons," Brenda whispered. "Of course." The smaller one stood on a stack of buckets, reaching up toward the cooler latch. Its paws worked quickly, unnervingly so. It twisted the lock, paused, adjusted, and twisted again. The latch clicked. The larger raccoon pushed the door open. Together they entered. Seconds later, the cake tray was being dragged across the floor, inch by inch. "It wasn't even knocked over," Tim breathed. "They were taking the whole thing." The raccoons struggled to maneuver the tray toward the vent shaft in the corner. One of them tried to wedge it in. It didn't fit. Then something shifted in the shadows. Another shape entered the hallway. Big, quiet, familiar. Milo. He didn't lunge. He didn't pounce. He stood. The raccoons froze. Milo lowered his head, tail flicking once. A soundless warning. One raccoon backed into the wall. The other chirred in alarm and bolted for the vent. The cake, caught mid-drag, slipped sideways and toppled. Frosting smeared, layers dented. The raccoons vanished into the ductwork. Milo looked down at the mess. He sniffed once, then turned and walked out of frame. No one spoke for a moment. Then Brenda, voice shaking, said, "He wasn't the thief." "He was the one who stopped it," Faith added softly. Tim leaned back in the chair. "And we locked him outside for it." Dr. Boone sighed. "And Martin's ready to ship him off to a secure facility by morning." Brenda stood up. "No," she said. "Not after this." She picked up the laptop, turned on her heel, and headed straight for Martin's office. Martin Hart was exactly where they expected him to be. At his desk, typing up a post-fundraiser report under the glow of a desk lamp, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, but still present, like the man himself. Precise, controlled, detached. He looked up as Brenda, Dr. Boone, Faith, and Tim entered, laptop in hand. "If this is about the cake," Martin began. "I've already filed the incident." Brenda cut him off. "Watch the footage." Martin frowned. "Excuse me?" "Just watch." Boone set the laptop down. Tim opened the file. The cursor hovered a moment, then clicked play. The room fell silent as the events unfolded on screen. The raccoons, the teamwork, the cooler lock defeated, the stolen cake, and finally, Milo, still watching, standing guard, then chasing them out. Martin leaned forward. His eyes narrowed as Milo appeared. He didn't say a word, not during the whole video, not even when the paw print appeared, the one he had used as justification. When it ended, he sat back slowly, his jaw clenched. Tim, barely more than a whisper. "You were wrong." Martin didn't look at him. He stared at the screen long after the image had faded to black. And then, something shifted. He reached into the top drawer of his desk. Not for a pen, not for a form, for his wallet. He opened it, carefully, and pulled out a photograph, edges soft with time. A boy, maybe 9 years old, sat on a back porch. On his lap, curled against his chest, was a tiny raccoon kit, its face buried in the boy's shirt, its name written in faded ink across the bottom. Bandit. "I rescued him after his mother was hit by a truck," Martin said quietly. "Raised him through the summer. I used to sneak food from the fridge, boiled eggs, apple slices. He'd follow me everywhere, slept in a laundry basket next to my bed." He swallowed. "But my dad got a job in Atlanta. No pets allowed. I left Bandit with a sanctuary. Never saw him again." For a moment, none of them said anything. The whole story had been sitting there, underneath all the forms, rules, and laminated signs. A childhood fracture that had never healed. A boy who had once loved something wild, and who lost it. Brenda's voice softened. "That why you wrote him off so fast?" Martin nodded once. "It's easier to file things away than to hope they come back." Faith stepped forward, gently. "He did come back. Not Bandit, but Milo. And you nearly sent him away again." Martin closed his eyes, then stood up. 15 minutes later, in the frosted darkness of early morning, the staff gathered silently by the outdoor enclosure. Martin stepped through the gate. No clipboard, no earpiece. In his hand, a ceramic plate with a slice of sweet potato pie, the only dessert from the fundraiser that had survived untouched. He placed it gently on the ground. Milo, curled on the far side of the enclosure, lifted his head, eyes amber in the moonlight. Martin didn't speak. He knelt, slow, deliberate, and waited. Milo rose, padded forward, sniffed once. Then, after a pause, took a bite. Martin exhaled. Behind him, Brenda smiled through quiet tears. Boone rested a hand on Tim's shoulder. Sometimes healing didn't come with applause. Sometimes it came with pie, and a long overdue apology that didn't need words. The following Monday, the laminated signs came down. Not all of them. Safety protocols still mattered. But the ones that made the staff feel like inmates in their own sanctuary? Gone. Replaced by warmth, familiarity, a quiet kind of belonging. And most noticeably of all, Milo was back. Not just in the technical sense, not confined to a pen or limited to specific hours. He was present, in the building, on his terms. At 7:23 a.m., he padded into the front lobby, walked past the vending machine, and without hesitation, leapt onto the top of the old filing cabinet by the reception desk. His spot. No one stopped him. No one even blinked. Instead, Brenda walked in and placed a small crocheted blanket on the corner of the cabinet. "For your elbows," she said, pretending not to wipe her eyes. Dr. Boone slipped him a sliver of salmon before first check-in. Faith added a line to the daily staff notes on the bulletin board. "Milo has resumed his hallway rounds. If he's blocking the printer, wait your turn." The staff laughed more that day. The coffee tasted better. Someone played music in the break room again, the kind with a banjo. It felt like breathing after holding your breath too long. Even Martin changed. He no longer carried his clipboard everywhere. He asked questions, he offered help. He even stayed late one night to help an intern with grant paperwork, though he refused the offered muffin. "Not before dinner," he said, and smiled for the first time in weeks. A week later, a visitor came in holding a small cardboard box. Inside a shivering opossum, barely weaned. The woman looked scared. "I didn't know where else to go." Before anyone could answer, Milo trotted into the lobby and sat down. Calm, observant, and unbothered, the woman stared. "Is that safe?" Martin stepped forward. "He's our ambassador," he said gently. "He reminds us why we're here." And Milo, quiet as always, turned his head and blinked slowly at the woman. She smiled. "Then I think I'm in the right place." That evening, as the sun sank behind the ridge and cast the entire center in warm amber light, Milo sat by the front window. He watched the trees sway. He watched the volunteers clean. He watched people laugh softly in the hall. He didn't need to be thanked. He just needed to be trusted again. And Elkgrove, every person in it, had learned something that would never fit neatly on a report. That not everything wild was dangerous. That not everything loyal needed a leash. And that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones keeping us all together.